Alright, so I've had a couple questions come my way, and it's really about competitive EDH and casual EDH, which I think most people would just call it EDH. Competitive EDH really just sets itself apart. You have multi-$1,000 decks competing against, I don't know, a couple $100 decks. I mean, that's on average a deck that I make. It just doesn't really seem like something I want to do. Dump a couple thousand into a deck. Now I can win before turn 4. It just takes the fun out of the game. So it's kind of ambiguous, but that is really what Commander is. When you have to define a power level, because there are just so many different commanders, so many different commander decks and ideas, which is why if you ever want to make a tier list, you will get nothing but complaints because everybody views these commanders in a different light, and whatever you think is competitive may not be as competitive to someone else. At least from my perspective, I want to set the record straight, so whenever you hear me talk about competitive EDH, or whenever you hear me talk about casual EDH, you understand exactly what I mean. Competitive EDH, at least for me, is any deck that has the specific purpose to combo off, and they can do this really efficiently earlier in the game. This isn't all competitive EDH decks. I know there's some hardcore control ones, but most of these decks are only interested in going off as soon as possible. Now, when they win turn 2, turn 3, turn 4, or even turn 1, I've heard of some decks win turn 1, that's not really as important as the deck's ability to do it in the first place. Some decks can consistently win on turn 3, but the whole purpose of those decks is to combo off and win as early as possible. Now, there are the competitive control decks that are specifically made just to try and stop these decks. Those would also be something I would consider competitive EDH, but considering it's a lot harder to build a deck, especially a singleton deck, just to stop those compared to just making a deck around winning as soon as possible, you're likely going to see a lot more of those combo decks. And I only say this because most people, if you're talking about a casual play group where there's nothing on the line, winning as soon as turn 3 or turn 2 is a pain. It doesn't really reward the players in any sort of way other than that one player who's likely going to be winning the game before anybody really gets anything significant going. And while I understand certain people have their preferences when it comes to the decks that they play, this is more of advice. I mean, people have their play groups, they have their own preferences. Most people don't like losing the game before they get to really play anything, which then I must define what a casual EDH deck is for me. Now, casual does not necessarily mean janky or intentionally bad. That's a really big misconception so far, I've noticed. But a casual EDH deck is a deck that is also capable of winning. It can be competitive, but it is not a deck that tries to win as soon as possible. It is a deck that tries to win at the right opportunity, mid to late game. It can have alternate win cons, it can have stuff like that, but it relies on a decent setup first. It relies on getting more pieces together, and it's not something that is easy to happen earlier in the game. You usually have to wait mid to late game for a lot of these things to happen anyway. But that is a casual EDH deck to me, something that isn't going to try to go balls to the wall, win as soon as possible. Now, this doesn't mean don't win at all. A lot of these decks are also capable of winning pretty efficiently, and you do see a lot of good competitive control decks as well, but they're not specifically designed for a competitive format. They're designed for casual. So to me, casual is playing to mid to late game. Competitive is playing early game. Hope I helped clarify that. If you're still confused, maybe I can help you out in the comment section. But as always, you guys have a wonderful day. Void here signing off. See you all next video.